Picture this, long-awaited spring finally arrives. You step out into your beloved garden, and instead of a burst of vibrant green and swelling buds, you are greeted by the tragic sight of blackened, lifeless remnants of your prized plants. Sound familiar? I think every gardener has experienced that heart-stopping dread, wondering if their magnificent roses or lush hostas survived the brutal winter. Today, we put an end to those worries. I'm going to share 5 reliable, tried and true methods for protecting your perennials from the frost, helping you keep your garden safe and sound. And trust me, some of these methods will genuinely surprise you with their simplicity and effectiveness. The 5th method, in particular, is the secret weapon of experienced gardeners, saving you not only time and stress, but also money. So settle in, because we're starting the operation to save your garden. Before we dive into the specific methods, let's figure out what exactly our plants fear most in winter. Many people assume the main enemy is low temperature, but the truth is a little more complicated. What truly harms plants isn't just the degree of frost, but rather the sharp temperature fluctuations and icy winds. Imagine the sun warms things up during the day, the snow melts a bit, and then a hard frost hits at night. Water trapped in micro cracks on the stems, and around the plant's crown freezes, expands, and literally tears the plant's tissues apart from the inside. This is why our primary goal isn't to tuck the perennial in like a baby, but rather to create a stable microclimate for it. We need to smooth out those temperature swings and protect the plant from the drying winter winds and freezing rain. By understanding this simple principle, you can make informed decisions about how to shelter each specific plant in your garden. After all, what works perfectly for a rose might actually be deadly for a heuchera. So the first, and arguably the most fundamental defense strategy we have, is intelligent mulching. But hold on. Don't rush out to grab a bag of fresh wood shavings or sawdust. This is where the first and most common mistake comes in. Many gardeners think of mulching as just piling up some organic material on top to keep the plant toasty. That is fundamentally the wrong approach. The primary goal of winter mulch isn't to warm the soil. It's to act like a thermos, to stabilize the soil temperature. It prevents the ground from freezing too deeply, and crucially, it protects the root system from those damaging freeze-thaw cycles. It's these constant fluctuations between thaws and hard freezes that rip apart the fine feeder roots, ultimately leading to plant weakening and death. So, let's debunk a common myth right away. Not all mulch is good mulch. Choosing the wrong material can lead to crown rot, promote fungal diseases, or even become a cozy winter haven for mice who will happily feast on the roots of your prized plants. Now, let's move on to the best materials for winter mulching. Your number 1 choice should be mature compost or well-aged manure. These materials don't just create a loose, breathable layer that perfectly stabilizes soil temperatures. They also act as an excellent organic fertilizer, ready to feed your plants the moment spring arrives. Another excellent option is neutralized sphagnum peat moss. It's very lightweight, holds moisture well, and offers superior thermal insulation. You can also utilize dry, shredded tree leaves, but only from healthy trees that show no signs of disease. Maple, oak, and birch leaves are ideal. However, avoid leaves from fruit trees, as they often harbor fungal spores that can spread disease. Coniferous barks like pine or larch are another fine choice. They are long-lasting, highly decorative, and they slightly acidify the soil, a trait beneficial to many garden plants. The most crucial rule for any of these materials is that they must be dry and loose. Never pile on wet, compacted, or matted material. Now let's look at the materials you absolutely need to avoid. The biggest enemy of proper winter protection is fresh sawdust and wood shavings. They are highly hygroscopic, meaning they absorb huge amounts of moisture. When temperatures drop, they freeze solid into an impenetrable layer of ice that completely suffocates the plant. Under this setup, your plant will most likely succumb to rot. Furthermore, as fresh sawdust decomposes, it aggressively pulls nitrogen from the soil, essentially starving the surrounding plants. Another highly debated material is straw. On one hand, it's light and provides excellent insulation. On the other hand, It's essentially a 5-star winter hotel for mice and voles. They will happily nest there for the winter, using the roots and bark of your plants as their primary food source. You should also strictly avoid hay, as it is packed with weed seeds. You'll spend the entire following summer battling the weeds that sprout from it. So remember this simple rule of thumb. If you are unsure about a material, skip using it for winter mulching. The risk of losing your plant far outweighs any potential short-term benefit. It's not just about the materials. The mulching technique itself is crucial. So, when should you do it? The best time is right after the first consistent frosts, once the top layer of soil has already started to freeze slightly. If you mulch too early, the warm, damp environment beneath the covering can encourage rot and decay. Furthermore, the plant won't have enough time to properly harden off and prepare for the cold season. How should you apply the mulch? The golden rule is never to bury the centre of the plant or the root collar. This area is the most vulnerable and needs to breathe. If you pile mulch directly against it, the plant will very likely succumb to rot or fungal issues. Always leave a space around the stems, a so-called air pocket, of about 5 to 10 centimetres, 2 to 4 inches. Apply the mulch around this space, creating a sort of donut or protective ridge. The thickness of the layer depends on the material and your local climate, but typically it should be between 10 and 15 centimetres, 4 to 6 inches, deep. In the spring, as soon as the ground begins to thaw, remember to carefully pull the mulch away from the centre of the plant. Let's move on to the second essential technique, which often goes hand in hand with mulching: hilling. Essentially, hilling involves building a protective mound of soil or other loose, insulating material around the base of the plant. This technique is absolutely vital for plants whose renewal buds are located close to the soil surface or on the lower stems. The classic example, of course, is roses. This is particularly true for hybrid tea and floribunda varieties. Their graft union and lower buds are the most vulnerable points, and without adequate hilling, these areas are highly susceptible to freeze damage. Other plants that absolutely require hilling include Group 2 and 3 clematis, certain hydrangea varieties, buddleia, and several other tender shrubs. This straightforward practice creates an essential layer of insulation, shielding the plant's crucial growth points from deep frost and icy winds. This gives them the best possible chance for successful overwintering and ensures abundant blooms come the next season. So, what's the best material for hilling up? The easiest and most readily available option is standard garden soil, perhaps scooped from another bed nearby. But it absolutely must be loose and dry. Crucially, don't start digging up soil right next to the plant itself, or you'll expose its roots. Bring it in from elsewhere. Excellent alternatives to soil are dry peat moss or well-rotted compost. These materials are light, breathable, and they won't freeze into a solid, impenetrable mass. Now here is the material you must absolutely never use for hilling: sand. Many gardeners make this mistake, thinking sand is a nice loose medium. But sand actually has very high thermal conductivity, meaning it freezes rapidly and thaws just as fast. On top of that, it retains moisture, turning into a solid block of ice right around the plant's crown. That's not protection, it's practically torture for the plant. So remember this rule: sand for winter protection is an absolute non-negotiable taboo. Hilling is a technique that also requires careful consideration. This should be done simultaneously with mulching. Wait until the ground is dry and the severe, persistent frosts have set in. The required height of the mound varies depending on the specific plant. For roses, for instance, the mound should be at least 20 to 30 centimetres high. This ensures the graft site and the base of the canes are completely covered. For clematis, 15 to 20 centimetres is usually sufficient. It's crucial to build the mound carefully, taking care not to damage the bark on the stems. Avoid overly compacting the soil. It needs to remain loose and airy so the roots can breathe. In the spring, just as with your winter mulch, do not rush to unhill the plants. Do this gradually, waiting until the threat of severe, late-season frosts has completely passed. Uncovering the plants too early can kill newly awakened buds. but waiting too long can lead to rot or dampening off. That brings us to the third method, the most reliable option for our most tender and delicate plants, the dry shelter, also known as the air dry method. So, what's the secret here? Essentially, we build a small structure or dome over the plant. This protects the plant less from the cold itself and more from winter moisture. Always remember the gardener's golden rule. In winter, moisture is far more damaging than frost. Most established plants can handle dry cold quite easily, but the combination of frost and dampness, that's the deadly cocktail. Slush, freezing rain, and winter thaws all soak the stems and the root crown. And when that moisture freezes again, the resulting ice, as we've discussed, expands and tears the plant tissue apart. The dry shelter creates an air gap that prevents moisture from reaching the plant, ensuring a comfortable and crucially dry winter dormancy. This method is ideal for roses, big leaf hydrangeas, rhododendrons, grapes, and many other sensitive species. The foundation of any effective air gap winter protection is the support frame. Its primary job is twofold: to bear the weight of heavy snow and to create that essential insulating air pocket over the foliage. The frame must never touch the branches, as direct contact can easily cause damage. You can easily construct the frame using a variety of materials you likely already have around the house or garden. Upside-down wooden vegetable crates work perfectly. Alternatively, you can use plastic hoops from a cold frame or mini greenhouse, setting them up crosswise over the plant. Even old buckets with the bottoms removed or several stakes tied together at the top like a teepee are viable options. Many gardeners also opt for specialised metal or plastic cones available at most garden supply centres. The main requirements for any frame are stability and strength. It needs to stand firmly on the ground and must not collapse during the first heavy snowfall. Finally, the frame height should be 4 to 6 inches taller than the highest point of the plant itself. Once the framework is ready, you need to cover it with a protective material. The number one choice here, without a doubt, is non-woven fabric covers such as Spunbond, Lutrisil, or Agri-Tex. Their main advantage is breathability. They allow air to circulate while simultaneously protecting the plants from wind and moisture. For winter protection, choose a denser material, typically rated at 60 grams per square metre. We usually double layer this fabric, which is sufficient for most regions. Now, the absolute enemy of successful winter covering is polyethylene sheeting or plastic film. Never, and I mean never, use plastic film for this purpose. Plastic traps condensation, prevents the plant from breathing, and as soon as the first thaw hits, it creates a powerful greenhouse effect underneath. This excessive warmth forces the buds to wake up prematurely. When the frost inevitably returns, the plant will be instantly killed. Let's take another detailed look and finally debunk the myth surrounding plastic sheeting for winter plant protection. Why is this practice so incredibly damaging? Picture this. It's a sunny winter day, perhaps 10 degrees below zero outside. Under that sealed plastic cover, the sun creates a powerful greenhouse effect, and the temperature inside can easily climb above freezing. The plant, fooled by this sudden warmth, starts to wake up, triggering active growth processes. But as soon as night falls, the temperature plummets again, and those tender, newly awakened tissues freeze instantly. This causes tremendous stress, a shock few perennial plants can actually recover from. On top of that, the combination of high humidity and zero ventilation creates a perfect breeding ground for fungal diseases. You are essentially inviting mold and grey rot to flourish. By spring, instead of a healthy, dormant plant, you'll likely uncover a slimy, rotten mess. So if your goal is to guarantee the demise of your perennial, go ahead and cover it with plastic. In every other circumstance, keep that sheeting far away from your garden. But what if you don't have horticultural fleece or spunbond material readily available? Nature actually provides us with a fantastic alternative covering material: conifer boughs, specifically pine or spruce cuttings. This is truly a magical tool in the hands of a gardener. First, the boughs are excellent at trapping snow, creating an extra layer of warm, insulating blanket over your plants. Second, unlike fallen leaves, boughs do not compact or mat down. The needles ensure that air remains trapped beneath the cover, guaranteeing crucial ventilation and preventing the buildup of moisture. Third, the needles release natural compounds known as phytoncides that help actively deter fungal diseases. And finally, the prickly structure of the boughs is very unpopular with mice and other rodents, meaning the material also provides effective mechanical protection against pests. If you have the opportunity to gather conifer boughs, of course not by breaking live trees in the forest, but by utilising branches from sanitary prunings or logging, it is one of the best solutions for covering many sensitive plants. This is particularly true for those that are prone to winter damp rot or smothering, such as hostas or lavender. What's the best way to use conifer boughs? You can either lay the boughs directly on the ground around low-growing plants or use them to construct small protective tents or teepees. When protecting roses or clematis, start by gently bending their canes down toward the ground. Secure them with landscape staples or pins, making sure to place a small piece of wood or styrofoam underneath. This prevents the canes from touching the cold, wet soil. Only then should you place the conifer boughs over the top, creating several protective layers. If you are combining the boughs with a structural frame and a non-woven fabric cover, you can place the boughs either directly on the plant, inside the structure, or on top of the covering material. Using them on top helps trap more snow and provides an extra deterrent against rodents. It's important to remember that you should only harvest or collect your boughs when the temperature is below freezing. This ensures the needles stay firmly attached and don't shed. And, of course, be sure to remove the boughs promptly in the spring so that they don't shade or hinder the emerging plants as they wake up. We're moving on to the fourth method, which isn't actually a form of covering, but rather a complete set of preparatory measures. This is proper fall preparation, and it all starts with pruning. Now listen carefully. There's a common belief that you must cut back every single perennial right down to the ground in the fall. This is a critical mistake that could cost you an entire flower bed. Many plants actually winter much better with their old stems left intact. Hollow stems, like those found on ornamental grasses or astilbe, provide extra protection for the root system and help trap insulating snow. Other plants such as heucheras or bergenia go dormant under the snow with their leaves still attached, which acts as their natural shelter. So here is the golden rule of fall pruning. If you are not absolutely sure you need to cut it back, then don't. It is always safer to do it in the spring. Mindless cutting in the fall only weakens the plant before it heads into winter dormancy. Certainly there are plants that should be pruned in the fall. It's not just an option, it's a necessity. This primarily includes perennials with lush top growth that naturally dies back in winter and can otherwise become a source of infection. Classic examples include peonies, phlox, hostas, daylilies, and delphiniums. They should be cut back after the first hard frost, once the foliage has withered and turned brown. Cut the stems down to about 5 to 10 centimetres or 2 to 4 inches above the soil line. It is crucial to collect and destroy all plant debris, especially if the plants suffered from diseases during the growing season. This prevents overwintering fungal spores and pests from taking hold. Autumn is also the time for the essential clean-up pruning of roses. Remove all immature, thin or diseased canes, along with any remaining leaves and flower buds. This helps the plant focus all its energy on preparing for winter, rather than supporting unnecessary green growth. The next crucial preparation step, one that many gardeners overlook, is deep winter watering. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Why would you water plants just before the heavy frost hits? But in reality, this is a critically important procedure, especially if you've had a dry autumn. The fact is that during winter, plants suffer not only from the cold, but also from what's known as physiological drought. Icy winds draw moisture out of the branches and needles, but the roots can't replenish it from the frozen ground. As a result, the plant simply dries out. This thorough deep watering saturates the soil to a great depth, creating a water reserve for the entire winter. Well-irrigated soil also freezes much slower and is better at conducting heat up from the deeper layers of the earth. This deep watering should be carried out in late October or early November, before the onset of sustained, hard frosts. A mature bush or tree may require anywhere from 30 to 50 litres of water. The final touch in preparation is the right autumn feeding regimen. Throughout the summer, we feed our plants nitrogen to promote lush, green growth. But come fall, nitrogen is enemy number one. It stimulates new shoots that won't have time to harden off before the frost. These immature growths will inevitably die, weakening the entire plant in the process. In autumn, our plants require entirely different elements. Their best friends are phosphorus and potassium. Phosphorus is responsible for strengthening the root system, helping it store vital nutrients. Potassium, in turn, increases the plant's winter hardiness, promotes the hardening of woody tissue, and thickens cell walls. That's why, in late August and September, you should apply a phosphorus and potassium-based fertilizer around your perennials. This could be superphosphate combined with potassium sulfate, or a specialised autumn complex fertilizer that has minimal nitrogen content. This type of late-season feeding is the guarantee for a healthy plant and successful winter dormancy. And now we come to the fifth method, the most brilliant one, and it's absolutely free. That is the use of snow. Yes, you heard that right. Ordinary snow is the best and most reliable insulating blanket nature ever created. Its structure is 90 to 95% composed of air trapped between the individual snowflakes. And air, as we all know, is the best thermal insulator available. A snowdrift just 50 centimetres deep can maintain a temperature near 0 degrees Celsius at the soil surface, even if the outside air temperature plunges to minus 30 degrees Celsius. Beneath this protective snow cover, plants enjoy ideal conditions. The temperature is stable, there is no drying wind, and they are protected from sudden, sharp temperature fluctuations. Therefore, the main task for any winter gardener is not so much to physically cover their plants, but rather to accumulate and hold the existing snow on their plot, especially over those tender, heat-loving crops. How can you make snow work for you? The answer lies in effective snow retention techniques. If your garden is exposed to the wind, which strips away that precious protective blanket of snow, you need to set up artificial barriers. The simplest method is to leave the stems of tall perennials standing in the fall. They make excellent natural snow traps. You can also spread out branches left over from pruning, or use pine boughs on your garden beds. For crops like strawberries or full-planted garlic, consider installing small protective screens made of boards or plywood along the rows. Throughout the winter, especially after a fresh snowfall, take the time to pile extra snow onto the protective coverings of sensitive plants like roses, hydrangeas, and other delicate shrubs. Build large, fluffy drifts right over them. But a word of caution, never use snow you've shoveled from paths treated with salt or ice-melting chemicals, and avoid scraping the snow completely off the grass, which can expose the roots beneath the turf. But what happens if we face a snowless and severely frosty winter? This is the most dangerous scenario for our gardens. It is during these harsh, exposed winters, when the frost hits the bare ground, that we see the greatest losses. This is precisely where all the previous four methods come into play, and we must utilise them to their maximum potential. If there is no natural snow cover, the role of primary insulation falls squarely on the mulch. This layer of mulch needs to be significantly thicker than usual. Air dry covering is no longer just recommended. It becomes absolutely mandatory for all delicate and sensitive plants. The protective framework or structure can also be supplemented by lining it with bags of dry leaves or straw. It is especially important to ensure these coverings are firmly anchored so they won't be ripped off by the wind. Essentially, during a snowless winter, we must artificially create the stable, sheltered environment that snow normally provides, one protected from wind and rapid temperature swings. This approach is undoubtedly more labour-intensive, but it is this diligence that will ultimately save your garden in extreme conditions. Okay, let's quickly wrap things up. Today, we covered the 5 key pillars to successfully winterizing your perennials: proper mulching to stabilise soil temperature, crucial mounding or hilling for your most vulnerable plants, reliable air-dry protection for the really tender ones, comprehensive fall preparation, which includes pruning, watering and feeding, and, last but not least, harnessing the incredible power of snow. It might sound like a lot of rules and small details, but here is the major secret that ties all these methods together. It's not about blindly following instructions, it's about truly understanding the specific needs of every single plant in your garden. The heavy blanket protection that saves your delicate hybrid tea rose could easily kill a hardy heuchera, which would simply rot away underneath it. That's why the gardener's most important tools are observation and love for their plants. Thank you so much for watching the video all the way through. If you found this helpful and learned something new today, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more exciting content coming soon. Now, a question for all of you. What winter protection methods do you rely on? Maybe you have a tried and true family secret, or a clever trick that has worked flawlessly for years. Share your experience in the comments below. Let's build the ultimate encyclopedia of gardening wisdom together.